Unlock the door to success in the dynamic world of real estate with your hosts, William Gomez and Alfredo Madrid. Join us as we dive into the inspiring journeys of loan officers and real estate agents, sharing their triumphs, challenges, and invaluable insights. Your key to navigating the ever-evolving landscape of real estate starts here.
Tom Rosser, welcome to the Real Deal Real Estate Podcast with Will and Alfredo.
That's right.
Alfredo, I appreciate you making this happen. I know you and Tom go way back, and I'm really, really excited. So the way I met, Alfredo in the business is because, I saw his production and I was like, amazed by it. And I was like, I got to get to know this guy. And he has, said just, I've seen your numbers, so I'm just super excited to kind of get into your brain and then also get into just how the real estate market is going right now, kind of get your thoughts on seeing where it's going, and super excited to have you here.
Yeah, Tom's definitely he's one of my best friends. I count on him for business, but I also count on him for a lot of personal things. He's definitely somebody that's somebody that's inspired me in my business, but also in my walk in my faith. Being a good father, being a good husband. He's definitely somebody that, I use as a great example for all those things. So I'm super excited to have him here today. Just like a grinder, man. This podcast is to help people out there who may be struggling in this market, or maybe thriving in this market, but give them ways to get better at what they do, right? Like it's a real estate based sales type podcast. And I think he's the absolute perfect guest for that.
100%. So Tom, for somebody that hasn't heard your name, give us a little 1-minute introduction.
I'm excited to be here. Number one, right? Will, thank you. Alfredo, thank you. 1-minute introduction. I grew up in Tulsa. I moved to Edmond 13 years ago. My wife got pregnant 13 years ago. She's from Edmond, Oklahoma. She said, "Hey, come to. We're moving to Edmond, raising a family there." I've got 4 girls in Edmond right now. Running a branch of Gateway. I've been at Gateway for almost 19 years. That's it. Trying to grow.
I think I'm going to let Alfredo kind of tell. I mean, you've known him for how long?
Man, how long have we known each other? I would say
20 years. I mean, 20
04.
years. So I started
20 years.
We started at the Mortgage Doctor together.
Probably late 03.
It goes all the way back to the Mortgage Doctor.
Yeah, late 2000. It's probably been 20 years, probably around this time of the year.
So
I started in this business summer. You probably came into the business in fall or winter.
Yeah.
And we actually worked together for a while. And he was always a guy that kept his head down. But yeah, I mean, I can definitely give a little.
Yeah, go for it.
I'll say Alfredo was my team leader at the Mortgage Doctor, right? It was subprime days. It was kind of laughable, the process that we were going through to get loans in the door. My best memory of it was if we got 4 people to sign a 1003, we got $100 cash. Didn't matter if the loans closed. Didn't matter if they qualified. None of it mattered at all. If we got 4 people to sign a 1003, we were getting $100 cash in a week. So it was like every week, just get 4 1003s signed, get them in the door, and you got your $100.
Oh yeah, this place was like a total sweatshop. Like we didn't know any better, right? Like we came into the industry not knowing how you're supposed to get paid. And back in those days, people were making like crazy amounts of money. That's why Dodd-Frank came around, because you could charge up to, at the time they had a limit where you could only charge somebody 5 total points for a deal, So you could charge a borrower for a $200,000 loan, you can charge them $10,000 and your company would let you keep 50, 60, 70% of that depending on where you worked. Or our company let us keep like 15%. We didn't know that was bad at the time. They just gave us a bunch of people to call and we did it.
Did you guys have to wear lab coats, doctor coats
at the mortgage, at the MD?
Mortgage Doctor?
Oh. That was good marketing, actually.
So Edmond, I was just telling you that I was there this weekend. Man, I've never really kind of like driven through it. I guess it's a beautiful town. I kind of compare it to like Jinx a little bit here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is Edmond the number one, like the wealthiest like town in Oklahoma?
Yeah, I bet Nichols Hills is in there as well. But yeah, Edmond. I mean, it's.
So Nichols Hills, is that a city or is that a neighborhood?
It's kind of a city inside of Oklahoma City.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Super, super nice place. And then you've been at Gateway for 19 years.
19.
I feel like that says a lot about him. In itself, in this business, whether you're a real estate agent or a lender, people are just moving all around. And Alfredo, before we moved to the new place, you were at Supreme for about 10 years. Is that correct?
Yep.
And so, that that tells a lot about you guys' character, and a lot of you guys' willingness to not blame things on, like, right now in the market. So many people, production is down, and they look around and see, like, who can I blame, right? So what are some of the struggles that you feel like you're going through this year?
I think you asked about the market. I just feel like there's a ton of fear in the market, right? So we've got to keep that fear out of it. Alfredo brought up faith earlier, right? So one of the things I was really excited about that I heard last week, right? And I've heard it all of my life. It's kind of a good reminder, right? We can't have fear and faith at the same time. So anytime I'm getting fearful, whether that's fearful about leads or fearful I don't have closings, fearful I'm not going to have food on my table, fearful I'm not going to provide, I need to view that as I have a lack of faith. Right. So just kind of turning that around has been super helpful for me this last week. Energy audits. I've been doing a ton of energy audits, like what is sapping my energy, what is taking my energy away throughout the day, and just trying to avoid those things has been a real big thing for me in the last 2 weeks.
So Tom has always been just a grinder. Like, I remember when we actually worked together, we were in this little, like, low-end office space, and he had his office, and I remember he brought in this desk that his dad had given him. It was the most ginormous atrocity you ever saw, man. It was like this humongous with like 17 shelves here, and like, but that was his desk. That's the only desk he had at the time. He brought it in, and
so you had to bring your own desk.
That's wait, what? This was BYOD, man. BYOD style business. It was like we were just getting off the ground floor, and there was no organization. But if I could draw a picture of Tom at that season, it was you walk into his desk, and his desk faced away from like that, so he faced away from you. It's him at his desk, just calling, right? But I think for Tom, and he can speak to this, things really changed for him when he started getting coached, right? Like, I saw his business take off enough that I was like, Tom, what are you doing? Like, what's going on over there? Because it really took off. Tom, I'd like you to speak on that. Like, what is I know the actual tactics. We can get into that if we have some time, but I want you to speak more around, like, what changed for you? What mindset shift happened? What paradigm shift happened for you? What was the change that really made everything take off for you?
A plan. I mean, simply a plan. I talk about before coaching and after coaching frequently, right? Where I would go to work, and as Alfredo said, I like to go to work. I enjoy going to work, right? I just think if it's 10 o'clock on a Monday or a Wednesday or a Tuesday, I need to be working. And I would always be there, and I didn't always have a plan. After coaching, I've had a plan since I've started coaching, so 12 years in coaching, of what to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And as long as I can get those things done and then make slight improvements to those things over time, it's going to work out over time.
And then for some context, I wish we would have talked about this at the very beginning, but so talk to me about whether it was 2020 or 2021, what was your unit count on those years?
In the 2 good years, we hit 75 million the 2 years in a row.
75 million for how many units?
310, 320, something like that.
310, 320. And then what are you on pace to do this year, volume and units?
We'll do probably 45, 44 million this year. Unit count is 230-ish.
230?
Yeah.
And I guess the real question is, who's going to take it this year, Alfredo or
I actually think he's got me this year.
I got to finish strong.
Yeah. I think I'm going to be in the 40s, but I think
that's how I first heard of you. Is he's like, there's this guy Tom, we were talking about numbers, and he just said, like under his breath or something, he said I think I'm gonna get Tom this year. And I was like, who's Tom? and then that's how I came to know about you. So why do you think it's so hard for people to do those things in our business? The Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
I'll give you an example. I'm in. I went to Scottsdale last week for this coaching 2-day seminar or whatever. I'm getting an Uber from the airport to the hotel, and the Uber driver's telling me about all the stuff that's going on in Scottsdale that day. And he's, the Rangers are in town for the World Series. There's like 4 different conventions that are all going on downtown Phoenix. And he says to me, I wouldn't be caught dead there. And I thought for a second, aren't you an Uber driver? Like, isn't that how you get paid? So a little bit of that, I think, in our industry, we need to go back to what our jobs are, because we didn't have to really do them for a couple of years during the pandemic. People were just calling us. They realized, hey, the value of ownership, of the value of home ownership. I didn't have to explain that, right? We help people build wealth through a home ownership. Getting into the details of how we do that and why we do that, we're having to sell that to home buyers again. Yes, it still makes sense to invest in real estate. And then you're having to share that with your realtor partners so that they can share it as well.
Yeah, I said this in the call yesterday that we had our sales call. A lot of people are waiting for the market to come back. And in some way, they think that it's going to come back like it was here in 2021, where you kind of are just waiting and you start getting phone calls and people are calling you because they need a deal saved and all this activity is going to happen. But what I said yesterday in the call, that is important for people in our industry to realize that the market is going to come back. It's just not coming back for everyone. It's only coming back for the ones that are putting in the work right now. It's only coming back for the ones that are buying stock when the stock prices are low. If you do not buy stock in the stock market when it's low, you don't get to benefit from it when it goes up, right? And I think that's the kind of market we're going to be in 2024 is like there are going to be people that have success, but it's only the people that are putting in the work even when they don't see the fruit of their labor right now.
And you're still part of the core coaching right now, is that correct?
Yeah.
And how long have you been doing that for?
12 years.
12 years. And then this is a coaching that you pay for.
Pay for monthly.
How much do you pay a month for it?
$2,000.
$2,000. When you told people that, like, do they just are like, what in the world?
Why would you continue doing that?
Yeah.
And my answer is always the accountability piece of it.
But people just don't. And walk me through your greatness tracker. Like, what do you do in this coaching every single week?
I'm going to get back to greatness tracker. I'm just going to tell you one of the big things from last week was this year I feel like I got away from my purpose, my vision, my plan, right? Those three things where I had a pretty good feel on purpose, had a decent vision, and then I put together a plan for 2023, and I don't think I really believed in my plan. That if I execute this plan to perfection, I'm going to hit the vision, and I'm going to. So the most excited I've been right now is I got to redo purpose, I got to redo vision, and I got to redo plan for 2024. And it's just got me really energized, really excited about the next year. The greatness tracker, what you're asking about is right now, it's not fun to track results, right? Results are down. So we're tracking activity. I've always tracked activity, but I'm putting more focus on activity. That greatness tracker is if I see this many people, if I eat lunch with this many people or break bread with this many people, if I make this many phone calls, my business is going to happen. So it takes a lot of the wonder out of it. What should I be doing or what will happen? It's if I do this, this will happen.
And that's the work that you're talking about. You talked about yesterday. That's the thing that people are not wanting to do, but only those people are the ones that are going to be, taking advantage of when rates drop, whenever we see a different market on that. And the one of the biggest things, when I first met Alfredo, one of his first questions he asked me, he said, "How many leads are you getting a week?" And I was like a deer in the headlights. I was like, I don't know, maybe 5, maybe I have no clue. And one other thing that, you and Brooks talked about yesterday, Alfredo, was that if you're tracking everything, you can have a little bit more peace of, hey, as long as I get these leads. And Alfredo, yesterday you talked about how that, like, you can only control things at a certain level, every single time. You can only control how many deals are walking in the door. You can only control how many people, how many people, will meet with you in a week. But the one thing that you can control is pick up the phone. Right. That's something that people are not willing to do. But when you're tracking things, you're like, I just have to get in front of these many people, call these many people. And based on my historical, conversion rate, I looked at that since I've been really, really tracking things in November 2019 and over I think it was close to 2,400 leads. I'm at an 18% conversion there. That right. means that I can, that kind of just boosted me up because I looked at it historically rather than where I'm at this year and said, as long as I'm getting 10 name and numbers, every single 10 name and numbers, I'm closing 2 deals. So who can I talk to that I can make sure that I can get in front of somebody that can potentially need a loan, right? And Alfredo, I just want to say thank you for everything you've done for me as a mentor and as a, leader, but just that piece of it has been a huge game changer in my business.
Well, it's the difference between being proactive and reactive, right? In every, not even in just real estate, but everybody's sales over time looks like a bunch of peaks and valleys, because you're in a valley, you're desperate, you want to make sales, you got bills to pay, so you make a bunch of phone calls, you get some business in the door, hopefully, and then you start taking your foot off the gas pedal because you kind of start thinking like, man, I have this figured out, right? You're not tracking anything, you're just seeing that you have it, then you focus on closing your business and not prospecting anymore, and what happens? A valley happens, right? And the only way to stop that from happening is to have a complete understanding of where you stand every day on the prospecting side of things so that you can make adjustments. Like I mentioned yesterday, if I come into the office, I check how many leads I got the day before. I always check how many that is month to date. I always check what that puts me on track for. How many have we converted? All those numbers every single day, because in the morning, I want to set the tone for what that day is going to look like. If I got 0 leads yesterday, it's an immediate gut reaction for me of what I got to do that day. I got to control what I control. I got to pick up the phone 50% more that day so that I can make up for what I didn't get yesterday, right? If I don't know that, what ends up happening is I just show up to a December or November and go, where's all my loans? What happened? Why don't I have anything, right? I already know 3 months ahead of time when I'm going to have a crappy month. I just know because I see how many leads I already got. My incubation, my turn time, my cycle for a lead is 60 to 90 days. So if I have a really bad September, it means I'm going to have probably a bad December, right? And so we have to understand that process and track it so that we can react real time instead of after it's too late.
What do you think, Tom, your conversion rate is right now, or what is it?
It's around 20%.
20%?
Same as you. It's gotten better actually in the last 6 months. I feel like the people that are calling me to buy houses are the ones that want to, right? Mm-hmm. So we try and differentiate. So the ones that want to buy a house are the ones that need to buy a house, right? And the ones that need to buy a house are the ones calling more often, right? It's rare that I get the guy that calls and says, "Oh my gosh, rates are at 7.5%. My payment's going to be this. Oh, sorry for wasting your time, Tom." But that does happen.
Yeah.
And then back to the tracking thing, what gets tracked gets done. I had a coach at one point that said, if it's not in writing, I don't believe you. So everything had to be in writing. We'd have a homework assignment to read a book, and you'd have to someone take a picture of me reading a book, print it, and send it to them. This actually happened. So I track. You mentioned that you were cycling this weekend. I'd imagine you know how many miles you cycled 100%. This year. Yeah, I could tell you how many miles I've run.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So one question that I asked Alfredo a little while back, and this is actually in 2020, my conversion rate for that year from lead to close was 28%, and I wanted to get it higher. I don't know if you remember me asking you. I'm like, what can I do to get this? I mean, that's kind of a really hard measure to get up. What would you say, a good answer to that is, especially right now in this market, what can you do to try to get that conversion rate to get higher?
I would tell you to go look at your lead sources, figure out which ones have the best conversion, and go focus on those ones. If I look at my lead sources, business people that refer me have a really high conversion. If a financial planner tells you to call me, you're very likely going to use me. So if I wanted to increase conversion, I just call more financial planners and try and get more relationships to refer me like that. If you notice that a certain group of agents or a company of agents refers you stronger, or your conversion is stronger with them than it is with a different group, you say, what have I been coaching them on, or what have I been programming them on differently that I haven't over here?
That's good. Yeah. And you have to be able to track in order to be able to see any of that too. Because whenever I started tracking, it kind of opened your eyes, because you kind of think, oh, this is one of my top agents. But then you look back and see how many leads, how many closings you've had in the last 12 months or the last year to date. And you're like, wait, that is not one of my top agents.
Yeah.
You got to be tracking.
Yeah. Where do you pull your motivation from, would you say?
Ooh, that's fun, because I've been working on purpose, but you try to pull it from purpose. I guess the purpose. I don't really, motivation is tough for me because I don't know if it's motivation. I think I just, I want to be consistent and yeah, motivation is tough. A guy in my office and I have been talking about that decision, that moment of decision of phone, not wanting to make a phone call. And I kind of relate it back to, a run, or you might relate it back to a cycle, right? Like I had to get up at 5 this morning to go run, and it was a little chillier than it had been, and I didn't really want to. But the thing that motivated me is that if I miss this one, then it puts me on a behind track on the Saturday run. It puts me behind track. So just trying to get better a little bit every day is motivating to me, and then the long game is motivating to me.
What do you mean by that?
Like one of my big goals is to have an amazing marriage, like just an amazing marriage. And I know you can't really view that in a short period of time. It's got to be like this long period of time. I want to, actions I take right now are going to build that for the long game. And I've focused on the long game.
So what, you said your marriage, but of course, like there's a lot of loan officers, a lot of real estate agents that thought that they were amazing loan officers and amazing real estate agents based off their production in 2020 and 2021. But you can't base it off of that. You have to look back at historically, what have you done over the last 10 years, 15 years, 19 years on that. So that's something that Alfredo talks about a lot, the long game. And I completely agree with it, but I think we live in a culture where we want things and we want them now. And it's kind of hard to think, that long, for most people.
I think the reward of a long game is better than the reward of a short game, right? Like if you get a really easy win right now, it's fun and great. But if you get a win that you worked on for year after year after year, that win is so much better to me.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And that has a lot to do with not focusing on results, right? Like when you're hyper-focused on results, that's what gets you playing shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, because your gratification comes from that pop, right? That hit of like, hey, something happened. But when you're just doing something because it's the right thing to do or the next thing to do, or like Tom said, following the plan, that following the plan thing is huge, right? Like getting a plan that works and just executing regardless of what the results are, that's what pays off big. Not that, if I go to a realtor meeting, or this is for realtors too, if you go to a client meeting with the intention of leaving that meeting with that sale, that's the only intention you have there, they're going to see right through you, right?
100%.
And so, but if you go to the intention of, I'm meeting with Tom and my intention is, how do I improve, how do I give value to Tom today? Like, how do I leave this lunch, this coffee? I'm driving to Edmund, hey, Tom, you got time for a coffee? And before I walk into that meeting, be like, how do I give value to him? That might just be listening to him, right? That's going to go way better in the long run, and that's going to pay way bigger dividends.
100%. So I don't know if you know these numbers, but in the quarter, I believe it was Q3 of 2021, there was almost 200,000 loan officers in the entire nation. And by the end of the first quarter of this year, we were down to right below 100,000, and we're estimated to be around 80,000 or below by the end of the year. I wish I had the numbers to know how many calls a real estate agent, whether you're a good one or not a great one, is getting a day or a week from loan officers to go out to coffee and talk, right?
I think you'd be surprised. I think probably the low-hanging fruit are getting calls. I was on not on a panel. I was in the audience of a panel of what they called whale real estate agents last week. And so 3 agents, I think one was in Arizona, and one was in Florida, and one was in Michigan. And they aren't getting a ton of calls. So whether that's because the 3 of us are fearful of calling the big agents, but they aren't getting a ton of calls. Another good thing that came from that, they think around 80,000 loan officers are going to start January 2024, right? So your numbers, same kind of numbers. So a guy in the audience said, okay, if there's 80,000 LOs left in the world, they're probably all pretty good, right? Like the 100,000 that left the industry or were the bad ones that didn't close on time, that didn't communicate. So he said, hey, if we're all closing on time, we're all communicating well, we're all closing accurately, all the kind of the sales pitch stuff that we use. He said, what is my value to you, real estate agent? And 2 of them kind of sat back, didn't really know how to answer the question. And one of the guys up there just jumped up and he says, you only have 2 values to me at that point. Your value to me is who you can introduce me to and how you can help me grow. So my ask this week to the agents I was working with is, who can I introduce you to? Who do you need help with? And do you want to grow? If you want to grow, how can I help you?
Wow, that's so good. So when you say, who can I introduce you to, what kind of answers are you? Now, you're asking these questions in one-on-one meetings with them when you're meeting with them.
Absolutely.
And who, like, what do they say?
I mean, sometimes I don't have an answer, so I want to help them with an answer, right? And so you help them with an answer of a story, right? I know people connect with stories, so I can tell them the story of a lady who landed the Orlando Magic, right? So she's a real estate agent in Orlando. She realized, hey, they're moving players and coaches in and out all the time. That would be a good referral source for me. And she just called the GM of the Orlando Magic, right? Had to work her way up. So, hey, do you know someone at the Thunder? Great, yeah, I got someone at the Thunder. Just little avenues like that. If they don't know who they need an introduction to, I say, hey, think about it. Here's a story from a lady who landed a big account with the Orlando Magic. How fun would that be?
Yeah. Now I see why his loan amounts are a lot higher than ours. He's dealing with the Thunder and
he's having bigger conversations.
Yeah. So a lot of these coffee meetings that are happening, the ones that are happening, I feel that, and Alfredo, you touched on this yesterday in the sales calls, that you go and you're like, I got whatever in the pipeline, which most people, whether it's 10, whether it's 15 or 0, they're freaking out about it. So it's like, I need to get more deals. So you go in there with the intention, like you said, Alfredo, to just sell. Well, you're not adding value. How do you feel like you're adding value to your current agents that have, had that relationship for a while and new agents that you're meeting?
Well, so part of that is I used to go into those meetings knowing how I'm going to add value. And I think that's probably the wrong way to go into it. I think I'm going into those meetings now and asking how I can provide value. And if they don't know how I can provide value, then I'm jumping in there with, hey, here's some tactics that you can do and this and that and this and that.
That's good.
That's really good.
But it's like, what do you need?
I really like that style because I think and I was kind of really running and gunning earlier on in my career about coming in and deciding what that agent needed in her business and thinking that, like, man, this agent's going to think I know what I'm talking about because I got all these things, advice for her. But if they don't open the door to let you in to give that advice, it's not going to be received well. And I've noticed a lot of times when I come in and I feel like I just crushed it and then I never hear from that agent again. And it's because I didn't take the time to listen and I didn't take the time to understand exactly what value I could give. So that's really good.
That's one of the biggest things that you taught me, and that changed my business. It's most people think of the golden rule, and you taught me about the platinum rule.
That's right.
You want to tell people about that?
The platinum rule is everybody knows the golden rule. It's treat people as you want to be treated. But the platinum rule is treat people as they want to be treated. And that one's really it's really important because for some reason we assume that the way we want things is the way other people want things. And that's just not the case. I'm a person that I like you to get to the point fast. In your email, if you don't, make your point in the first 2 sentences, I start to fade off most of the time. And some people don't like that. If some people you don't come in and ask them about their day first and how they're doing, they just think you don't care and that you're mad at them, right? And so it's real important to understand how people want to be communicated with and find out how they want to be treated instead of how you think they should be treated.
I was looking at some of my numbers the other day, and because I'm really focused on like my top 5 agents, and out of those top 5 agents, like 37% of my business this year came from that. Do you know what that number is for you?
I don't.
What do you think it is?
It's probably similar.
Similar?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I focus on a top 5 as well.
What do you think makes a top 5 agent for a loan officer?
I mean, I would measure it by closings, right?
No. I'm saying like that individual. I mean, they got to be somewhat top producing realtors, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you think makes those agents, one, be top producers, but then also refer you? Because you have those 2 different people that hand us 3 cards or just say, hey, you should call Tom. But then the top 5, I mean, there's a difference on the way that they refer you.
They value you, right? You've shown them why they should value you, and I think you just need to tell them to tell their friends, right? I mean, if those other ones are giving you 3 cards, don't value you enough, and that might be that you haven't shown them how to value you enough. And I always say, do you give 3 title companies? Do you give 3 home inspection companies? Do you give 3 of these? And the answer is no, almost always, right? Well, why do you value this title company over this other one? Why do you not show that same value to me?
And that's another reason that your question is another reason why the quantity game is so important in our business. I'm not just calling 1,000 people so that I can get that one deal, and the whole number, how it works, where if I call 1,000, I meet with them. It's not just that. I am truly seeking the best business partners for me, right? Yeah. I'm truly seeking who not only can send me business, but that I work well with, that works well with my clients. I work well with their clients. We are a team. We look out for each other. And lo and behold, we become friends. We have relationships with them. You know, I have some great friends that are my agents, right? I've been through thick and thin with a lot of the agents I work with. And so that quantity game is important because you're not going to casually find these people. You got to be intentional about going out there and meeting enough people that I realize he's the type of guy I want to work with, and she's the type of lady I don't want to work with, right? We've all had that agent or that business partner, realtors alike. They've all had that lender that they're like, that's just not my style, right? And so that's why I think it's so important that you're putting yourself out there as much as possible, because you're never going to meet the right people for your business if you're not out there striking relationships up.
Yeah. Are you pretty aware of what's going on with like the NAR lawsuit and stuff?
Yeah.
So it's crazy how, you know, you hear that saying like kick them while they're down type of thing. You know, business is already where it's at. And Alfredo and I you probably didn't have to deal with this as much, but we had to deal with this bill that was getting amended that could have potentially, you know, impacted a lot of our customers to where like you couldn't, you know, there was a lot of fear in people's minds that if you had to be a U.S. citizen to buy a property. And of course, we're thankfully over that. But now, right after that, like the NAR, you know, gets sued over $1 billion, everything. And, you know, there's all this rumors and speculation that it could change the business. What are your thoughts on that?
I go to control and what I can control, what I can't control, right? So I can't control that one. I've been chasing buyer's agents for 20 years, right? So I definitely need to be involved and know what's going on, but it's just like interest rates to me where I can't control it. Why pay attention?
Yeah. What are you saying right now when it seems like everybody loves to make sure that, hey, the market sucks for you too, right? And so there's a lot of talk about that. So you call an agent, you call another loan officer, and they're like, "Hey, is it bad for you too?" Right? And how do you handle that? Like, what's your conversation around that with people? Do you add to that,
I think I told you a story about I ran into two gentlemen in August. I was at like a 5K thing, and it was held by a real estate company. So there was a bunch of industry folks there, and within like a 5-minute period, 2 loan officers came walking by me, and one of them was young. And he was freaking out and he was frantic and, oh my gosh, there's no business. Oh my gosh, it's so slow. What are we going to do? I'm going to go get a job at Lowe's, or, you know, I forgot what he said. He was going to go get a job somewhere else. And then the second guy came up to me, and he's like a 55-year-old guy. I don't know how old he is. And he says, Tom, we got our lives back. So I think there's just the perspective of how you look at that. I've got more time to work on my processes. I've got more time to work on scripting to make sure my conversion can be higher. I've got more time to spend with my team and train. There's different ways to look at it's slower than I want it to be. So I think I've been responding that, yes, leads are down. Yes, it's slower than I want it to be. But, you know, if you ask my team or the people in my office, when it's slow, I am busier than ever. I'm making more calls. I'm seeing more people. I'm on more appointments. So when it's slow in my office, I'm not slow.
Man, that's really good.
That is really good.
So your team... From your team's perspective, when the market is down, that's when they see you the most active.
Absolutely.
Man, that's something I got to take note on right there.
Everybody's the opposite of that, though.
I know. Me included.
It's truly insane. What are some of the things that you think that you've been doing this? You've been at your company for 19 years, but how long have you been doing this overall?
That 19 and a half. Like we were at the mortgage doctor for like a year maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the technology, a lot of things have evolved. What are some new things that you're adding this year, last year, that you weren't using before in order to be able to, you know, stay ahead?
Video. I mean, we're doing more videos than ever, trying to leverage through video. I went to a video class last year, video and social media. I'll say social media.
What class did you go to?
Just that seminar. And then it was a seminar and 2 agents, an agent and a mortgage guy spoke about video or held an hour and a half breakout class about videos and how they're leveraging videos and social media. So I've got 0 social media presence right now. So that's an opportunity for us. and trying to get over some of the fears around getting, social media. I send videos now, so I don't really have any fear around video. It's just getting more consistent and getting them out there.
Just the content creation is overwhelming, right? Like, what am I going to talk about? Like, you always have those, 3-4 ideas in the chamber, and then you go through those, and then you're like, all right, what now, right? And I think you just have to be more consistent about, because, on your way to work, how many different thoughts do you have about your business, you think?
A ton. I wrote a bunch of them down
like
today.
1,000, right? Like, on the way, you're like, I'm thinking this, I need to do this. Oh man, and I'm even just those topics alone that if you were to discuss them is enough, right? But I run into the same thing. Will's really good at that as far as coming up with content and putting it out there and having it prepared. But it seems like I always have 3 or 4 ideas, and then so Will, tell us a little bit about that. Like, how do you stay consistent on the content part of it?
So you once told me that, motivation, only lasts a little bit, but the only thing that you can do to keep motivation going is have a process, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, anything that I do that I think that I want to kind of have any type of longevity, like I want to have a process, and I want to have goals. I recently heard, what's his name? Seinfeld, the comedian, Jerry Seinfeld. He talked about how the reason he became the comedian that he became is because before he had any success, he didn't have any consistency in working on his comedy. So what he started doing is he said, all I want to do is work on my comedy for a couple hours a day. And every single day that I work on my comedy, I am going to put an X through the calendar on one of those calendars that shows the entire year. Mm-hmm. He said, after a few weeks, you're going to have a chain. And then after that, your whole goal is you don't want to break that chain. You don't want to break that chain, because when you break that chain, it hurts. And it reminded me of an app that I have that's called Streaks. It's $4.99, one-time fee, and you can add any goal that you want to add on there. And every single time that you do it, you press it. And then it shows like, oh, hey, you've read your Bible 125 days in a row. And so that it's what motivates me to be like, I can't miss it today because I'm going to have to start from day one. Right.
Yeah.
And then, so that's for me, I add everything to that. And I'm thinking it's like, okay, you've posted, at least 3 videos for the last, 50 weeks, and so I know that if I don't post another, have another week where I at least I have to start all over. And at that point you can have, you and I were talking about this. I was blessed with, when I started, I used my same account and I had around 1,000 followers. And then I quickly got momentum and I felt on top of the world. It was, awesome. And then now it's it seems like it's complacent a little bit. And it's who cares? It's like being a loan officer, right? It's who cares if you did 5 million last month? What do you got this month? So for me, I'm thinking I don't care what happened last year. If I want to keep this going, I have to be consistent. I haven't been in the business for nearly as long as you guys have. I started in February 1st of 2018. And I believe it was 2019 where I saw an interview of Shant. I can't pronounce his last name. He's at the time, and I think he might still be the #1 loan officer in the entire nation with guaranteed rate. And one of the things that stuck with me was that he said one of the biggest things that helps me, and it took me getting very, very upset, is that I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw, one of my friends buy a house. And we've all been there, right? It's like the worst feeling. And he said, instead of pointing at fingers at them, I pointed a finger at me, and it was my fault because how are they supposed to keep remembering that I do loans for a living? So he said, I had to be responsible to be omnipresent. That's whenever I started buying, ads, billboards. I started buying ads on the subway. He's from Boston. And so he was talking about how he invested a lot of his money back into his business to be able to be omnipresent, be at everywhere at once. Now we have the ability to be omnipresent for free, or even have them pay you. these platforms will pay you to post content to keep people on the app. So that's what keeps me motivated. It's the process and knowing that who cares if your last post got, 100,000 views. You got to keep going.
Yeah. There's so much out there that can help you. Tom, how do you handle and this is what I think this show's good about, because I think addressing like the fears that are actually out there, the fears that are holding people back. My goal for this podcast is that it helps people break free of some of those things and helps them moving forward, right? Like I get stuck. I get a little paralyzed sometimes when it's like, do social media, make these calls, meet this many people. And it's all these things. And I'm just like, man, it feels like if I don't implement all this, I'm not doing anything anyway. So I might as well not do any. Like it just very like paralyzing, right? And it makes you check out a little bit. Tom, what's your strategy for that when you see? Like I know that even when I talk to you about social media, I can tell that you're just like, I'm trying, right? And so, what is your strategy for advancing?
We'll talk fear first, right?
Okay.
Like, because you guys have different fears than I do. The fear on content, I don't have that fear. Like, I feel like I could Google, 5 mortgage people, just watch their video and then go create whatever right? So I don't want to recreate the wheel. I'll just redo whatever video they did. My fear was that that I'm too old, right? We were just discussing I'm 43, and that
you thought you were 42.
It would look desperate, right? At this point, right? That I haven't done it. I felt like it's a waste of time. I get frustrated when people are spending too much time on social media and maybe not interacting with me. So that is my fear.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have the content fear. And then the way I would try to get around that would be calendar the time and then follow the calendar. So the guy I heard speak at 3:00 on Wednesdays, every single Wednesday from 3 to 5, that's what he does. Videos.
Who is that guy?
His name is Greg Gale.
Greg Gill.
Yeah. So he's got a pretty big presence at this point. He's got a good presence.
What is this, a podcast or what is this?
He probably does a podcast. You'll find him.
Okay.
All the reels, yeah.
Yeah.
He was a big producer before the reels.
Yes. So what he'll do too is if he doesn't have enough content for him, he'll invite 5 of his partners, right? Builder partners, realtor partners, whatever, and he'll come and have them do some content. So he's got a room set up like this, ready to go for 2 hours every single Wednesday. If he can't fill the time, somebody's there to fill the time.
That's good.
Yeah. So kind of for the sake of time here, this has been great, man. So thank you so much for being on here. This is really good.
And we didn't even say that he drove a couple hours to get here.
He drove a couple of hours, and for the sake of making content, right? Oh, his parents are here. And think about the fears you had at this point. What advice would you give? How old were you when we moved from the mortgage doctor over to that office?
Man, I thought I was going to move up the ladder at the mortgage doctor. We were probably 24.
Okay, but we left. So let's say we were 23, 24. What advice would you give to your 23, 24-year-old self? And this doesn't have to be like make 40 calls. Like what if you had 2 minutes time with that guy and you got to walk up to him, tap him on the shoulder, what would you say to him?
A little bit of what we've kind of talked about, but taking ownership, right, of what you do and not passing that on to somebody else. And it's something I'm really trying to get into my kids right now is, like you said, right, the grass isn't greener somewhere else. The grass is greener where I water the grass. And it's not, it's kind of like, I'm going to screw this analogy up, but if I knock a cup of water off the table, right, do I say the water fell? Or the cup fell, or do I say I knocked the cup over? Different ways to look at it, and it needs to be ownership.
Just extreme ownership. Do you feel at that point in your life you weren't taking extreme ownership?
Oh, I was definitely not as much as I do now.
Sure.
That's great. I listen to a guy, Darren Hardy, every single morning, Darren Daily. That's exactly what I almost sent it to you because he talked about, people are complaining about that they have a sucky marriage, that they don't have great health, that their business in the dumps. And he goes, the reason why those things are happening, it's because of you. So
I really wanted to get into the personal side of things. What about that side? What advice do you have for fathers and husbands out there?
I don't know. I kind of lean on books a little bit, right? So that ownership book, that Atomic Habits book is really good to just make sure that your habits are right and that you're doing the right things. I write down, give my best to my best every single morning. I've got
give my best to my best.
So my best is my family, right? I can't be low energy. I can't be, touchy, annoyed, whatever the word might be, when I get home. I can't.
Like you can't go home and make them pay for how hard you worked at work today. Yeah.
No. And there's a piece of me that in the past would be, well, that's why I'm working so hard. And then when I get home, I can relax. Well, no, that's when you need to be on, when you get home.
Tom, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate you. And for people listening that want to get a hold of you, just to either, reach out, unless they're realtors, they can reach out.
Yeah.
Where can they find you?
GatewayOKC.com is the best way to find me.
Yeah. Sounds good.
I'm going to make Tom really uncomfortable here and tell him how much I love him. Thank you for being in my life, man. Thank you for being a great example, for being an inspiration to me, business, father, dad, husband, all those kind of things. And, we're glad to have you on the show. Tom Rosser, he's the real deal.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks.